Two men stepped out of eternity. One had been dead for 14 centuries. The other never tasted death at all. They materialized on a high peak, flesh meeting spirit, time collapsing into a single blinding moment. Peter, James, and John fell. They hit the dirt in absolute terror. Heaven had just broken through the veil. The mountain shook. The air smelled of ozone and ancient fire. Jesus stood between them. His face burned like a dying sun. His garments became violently white, and they were discussing an execution. An execution scheduled in exactly 6 days. But here is the question nobody asks. Why these two men? Look at the vastness of Hebrew history. Why not Abraham, the father of faith? Why not David, the ultimate giant slayer? Why not Isaiah, who saw the very throne room of God? The answer is not a simple history lesson. It is a cosmic blueprint. It reveals the hidden architecture of Scripture. It exposes why the Old Testament exists, why Jesus had to bleed, and what truly shattered on the cross. To understand this mystery, we must look back. We must look at the men in the light. Let us begin with the dead man, Moses. His name echoes through millennia. Born a Hebrew slave in the mud of Goshen, hidden in a woven basket, raised in the marble halls of a pharaoh, his life reads like an impossible epic. But his true reign began in fire, a burning bush that would not consume, a divine voice commanding the impossible. Bring my people out. And Moses obeyed. He shattered the greatest empire on earth. 10 devastating plagues, rivers turning to thick, rotting blood, skies black with locusts, the wailing of Egyptian mothers in the midnight dark. Moses led the greatest exodus in human history. 2 million slaves walking out of bondage, marching through the towering walls of the Red Sea. Archaeological sands still hide the crushed chariots of their enemies. But God demanded more. 50 days after Egypt, Moses climbed Mount Sinai. The peak became a furnace. God descended in smoke, fire, and deafening thunder. The earth violently quaked. Ancient Jewish traditions in the Midrash say the mountain itself wept in fear. God spoke the 10 Commandments aloud. Then Moses vanished into the dense cloud. For 40 days he breathed the atmosphere of heaven. When he returned, he carried literal weight. 2 slabs of heavy stone, the constitution of a new nation. The law of heaven brought to the dust of earth. Moses became the ultimate mediator. He stood in the terrifying gap between a holy God and a broken people. Every rule, every blood sacrifice, every measurement of the tabernacle, it all flowed through his hands. He was the greatest prophet Israel had ever known. But Moses carried a fatal flaw. We will return to his tragic end. First, look at the second man on the mountain, the deathless one, Elijah. If Moses represents the heavy burden of the law, Elijah represents raw, untamed prophetic violence. He has no recorded backstory, no genealogy. He simply detonates onto the pages of history, a phantom stepping out of the wilderness. He stood before the wicked King Ahab. He looked into the eyes of tyranny, and he locked the sky. There shall be no rain except by my word. For 3.5 grueling years, the heavens turned to iron. Famine choked the land. Crops turned to ash. While Elijah drank from a hidden brook, fed by ravens, his defining moment was pure cinematic chaos. Mount Carmel. A nation paralyzed by idolatry, worshipping Baal, a demon god of storms. Elijah called for a public showdown, one man against 450 false prophets. How long will you limp between two opinions? His voice cut through their cowardice. If the Lord is God, follow him. The false prophets screamed. They danced wildly. They slashed their own flesh with knives. Blood soaked the soil. Silence answered them. Absolute, humiliating silence. Then Elijah rebuilt the broken altar. 12 stones, a deep trench. He drenched the wood in precious, scarce water. He prayed a simple, quiet prayer. And fire fell from the sky. It was not a spark, it was a cosmic strike. It vaporized the sacrifice, it shattered the stones, it licked up the water and the very dust. The people fell on their faces in terror. The false prophets were executed at the brook. Elijah was a force of nature, and nature could not hold him. He never tasted the grave. A whirlwind of fire descended. Chariots burning with angelic heat tore the sky open, and Elijah was pulled alive into eternity. Now, look back at the mountain of transfiguration. Ancient texts and extra-biblical lore point to Mount Hermon, the very mountain where the Book of Enoch claims fallen angels first descended, the epicenter of ancient cosmic rebellion. Here, Jesus reclaims the high ground. Here, the dead lawgiver and the deathless prophet materialize. They are not here to worship. They are here to report. They are here to discuss a departure, an exodus, the ultimate rescue mission for the human soul. But every epic has a fracture, a tiny, almost invisible crack. For Moses, the fracture began in the desert. 40 years of wandering, 14,000 days of dust, 14,000 days of complaints. The seed of his downfall was psychological exhaustion. The Israelites arrived at the wilderness of Zin. Ancient Jewish traditions in the Midrash record a dark detail. Miriam's well had dried up. The miraculous water source was gone. Panic set in. First breeds madness. The people turned on Moses. They wished they had died in Egypt. They weaponized their suffering against their leader. God gave Moses a simple command. Speak to the rock. Just speak. Let the water flow through grace. But Moses was hollowed out. Decades of rebellion had corroded his patience. Sin is rarely a sudden explosion. It is a slow, creeping justification. Moses looked at the screaming mob. He stopped seeing them as God's fragile children. He saw them as parasites. His ego slipped into the driver's seat. He stood before the jagged stone at Meribah. He raised his heavy wooden staff, the same staff that split the Red Sea. He did not speak to the rock. He screamed at the people. "Hear now, you rebels! Must we bring water out of this rock for you?" Listen to the pronoun, we. He usurped the divine position. He struck the rock, once, twice, violently. Water gushed out. God remained merciful to the thirsty masses, but the psychological damage was done. Moses had normalized his own rage. He imposed his human bitterness onto a holy God. He misrepresented the character of the Almighty before 2 million witnesses. He made God look furious when God was ready to provide. The escalation triggered an immediate, devastating consequence. The point of no return. God's judgment fell like an executioner's blade. Because you did not trust me, because you did not uphold me as holy, You will not enter the land. Can you fathom the crushing weight of that sentence? 40 years of blood, sweat, and trauma, dealing with constant idolatry, surviving the golden calf, enduring Korah's violent mutiny. He dragged a nation to the absolute edge of the finish line. And God locked the gate. Deuteronomy 34 paints the most tragic scene in the Torah. God ordered Moses up Mount Nebo, a lonely, desolate peak. From there, Moses looked out. He saw the vast cartography of the promise. He saw the Jordan River winding like a silver ribbon. He saw Jericho, the city of palm trees. He saw the fertile valleys of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. The exact coordinates promised to Abraham centuries before. He saw it all, and he knew his feet would never touch that soil. Moses died right there, alone on the mountain. His lungs stopped, his eyes closed. The text says God himself buried him in an unmarked grave in Moab. But the story does not end in the dirt. Ancient apocryphal texts, like the Assumption of Moses, reveal a darker aftermath. The New Testament book of Jude confirms it. The archangel Michael and Satan fought over Moses' corpse. Why? Because the devil knew human psychology. If humanity found the tomb of Moses, they would worship the bones. They would turn the prophet into an idol. So God hid the body. Moses died outside the physical promise, a masterclass in tragic irony. Hold that tragedy in your mind. Now fast forward 14 centuries. Shift the geography. We return to the Mount of Transfiguration. Archaeological and historical consensus points to Mount Hermon. This is not a random hill. This is ground zero for cosmic warfare. The Book of Enoch states that Mount Hermon is the exact location where 200 fallen angels descended. The Watchers, the entities that corrupted human DNA before the flood. Hermon was the ancient stargate of demonic rebellion. It was the darkest real estate on earth. And Jesus walks right to the top of it. He reclaims the cursed high ground. He brings Peter, James, and John. And suddenly, the veil of reality tears open. Jesus ignites with uncreated light, and two men step out of the eternal realm: Moses and Elijah. Moses, dead for 1,400 years. Elijah, taken alive in a chariot of fire 900 years prior. They stand on the mountain in glorified luminous bodies, visible to human eyes, breathing human air. Why are they here? Luke chapter 9 verse 31 gives us the exact translation. They were speaking of his departure. The Greek word used in the original manuscript is exodos. They were discussing Jesus' exodus. This was a military strategy session. Moses led the first exodus out of Egypt. He freed slaves from a physical pharaoh. But Jesus was about to launch the ultimate exodus. He was going to free humanity from spiritual slavery. He was going to break the chains of sin, death, and Satan. The parallels are mathematically precise. The original Exodus required a Passover lamb, blood smeared on wooden doorposts, the angel of death passing over the covered houses. Jesus was stepping into the role of the final unblemished lamb. His blood would be smeared on the wooden beams of a Roman cross. Paul explicitly writes in 1 Corinthians, "Christ, our Passover, has been sacrificed." Moses led the Israelites through the crushing waters of the Red Sea. Paul calls this a mass baptism, a transition from death into life. Jesus was about to pass through the dark waters of death itself. He would drown the power of the grave. He would rise on the third day, pulling a new humanity out of the abyss. Moses climbed Mount Sinai to receive the law, a law that demanded absolute perfection, a law that no human could ever fully keep. Jesus would fulfill every microscopic demand of that law. He would live the perfect life Israel failed to live, and then he would bear the curse of the law on Golgotha. Look closely at Moses on Mount Hermon. Do you see the poetic justice? Moses was barred from the earthly Canaan. He died looking at the dirt. But here he stands, glorified, radiant. Moses finally made it into the Promised Land, not a piece of Middle Eastern real estate. He entered the true kingdom of God, the eternal reality that Canaan was only ever meant to shadow. And Elijah is there for a massive reason. He represents the prophets, every seer who ever warned Israel. Isaiah, who saw the suffering servant. Jeremiah, who wept over Jerusalem. Daniel, who saw the Son of Man approaching the Ancient of Days. Elijah stands as their ultimate avatar. He looks at Jesus and testifies, "This is the one." Moses and Elijah, the law and the prophets, the entirety of the Old Testament system, they are bowing to the carpenter from Nazareth. They are saying, everything we wrote, everything we bled for, it was all pointing to him. But human nature hates mystery. Human nature demands control. Enter Peter. Peter watches the cosmos aligning. He sees the culmination of human history unfolding before his eyes. He is terrified. His brain cannot process the theology, so he ignores the silent warning of the sacred moment. He speaks. He blurts out a catastrophic misunderstanding. "Lord, it is good that we are here." He offers a human solution to a divine revelation. "Let me make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." Peter means well, but his psychology is fundamentally flawed. He is trying to domesticate God. He wants to build booths. He is referencing the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. He thinks the Messianic kingdom has arrived in a political, physical sense. He wants to freeze time. He wants to keep the glory on the mountain. But worse than that, look at his math. 3 tents, 3 equal structures. He is putting Jesus, Moses, and Elijah on the exact same level. He is equating the Son of God with a dead lawgiver and a wild prophet. He is trying to mix the old covenant with the new. He is trying to keep the rules of religion while embracing grace. You cannot mix them. The universe will not allow it. And God the Father intervenes with terrifying speed. The climax hits like a shock wave. Peter is still speaking when the atmosphere collapses. A bright cloud overshadows them. This is not a weather anomaly. This is the Shekinah, the unapproachable, devouring glory of God. The same cloud that terrified Israel at Mount Sinai, the same glory that filled the Holy of Holies until the priests could not stand. It swallows the mountain. The temperature drops, the light is blinding, and a voice rips through the fabric of space and time. It is not a whisper. It is the sound of many waters. It is the voice that spoke galaxies into the blackness. "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." The Father validates the sacrifice. Then comes the absolute command. Listen to him. Not Moses. The era of the law is dead. Not Elijah. The era of prophetic shadows is over. Listen to him. The disciples shatter. They fall face down in the dirt. They expect to be vaporized. They wait for the fire that Elijah called down on Carmel. They wait for the earth to swallow them like Moses saw in the desert. Silence falls. A heavy, ringing silence. Jesus steps forward. He touches them. Rise and have no fear. They slowly lift their heads. They look around the desolate peak. The cloud is gone. The blinding light has faded into normal sunshine. Moses has vanished back into eternity. Elijah has disappeared. Only Jesus remains. Just Jesus, standing alone in the dust. The imagery is violently intentional. The Father just dismantled the entire Old Testament religious system in a single breath. The law cannot save you. The prophets cannot save you. They were only a map. Jesus is the destination. When you reach the destination, you no longer need the map. The mountain is quiet now. The echo of the divine voice fades into the wind. The disciples stare at the empty space where ancient ghosts just stood. Moses is gone. Elijah is gone. The emptiness is heavy. It is the profound aftermath of a theological earthquake. The Transfiguration was not just a light show. It was an eviction notice. It was heaven officially retiring the old system. For centuries, humanity tried to climb the mountain of God through the law. They bled animals. They memorized codes. They lived in the terrifying shadow of failure. The law was a mirror, exposing the rot in the human heart. It demanded perfection, but it offered no power to achieve it. Moses brought the rules, but Moses died outside the promise. The prophets screamed into the void. They warned of judgment. They pointed to a distant horizon. They were the signposts in a dark wilderness. But a signpost cannot carry you home. Elijah called down fire, but fire cannot cleanse a guilty conscience. Only Jesus remains, because only Jesus is enough. He is the fulfillment of every bloody altar in Leviticus. He is the suffering servant Isaiah wept over. He is the prophet greater than Moses, predicted in Deuteronomy. He kept the law flawlessly. He absorbed its curse completely. He did not come to abolish the ancient texts. He came to swallow them whole. Look at the psychological reality of this moment. The human mind craves a checklist. We want a religion of transactions. We want to build 3 tents. We want to manage our sin through moral performance. We think if we just try harder, if we just obey the rules like Moses, God will owe us. That is the lie of Eden. That is the slow, creeping justification that kept Moses out of Canaan. The belief that our effort can somehow bridge the infinite gap. Or we swing to the other extreme. We chase the spectacular. We want the fire of Elijah. We want signs, wonders, and emotional highs. We run from conference to conference, seeking a new prophecy, a fresh revelation. We want the adrenaline of the supernatural to validate our faith. But God the Father shattered both illusions on Mount Hermon. He looked at the rule keepers and the miracle chasers, and he gave one command: listen to him. The voice from the cloud is speaking directly to you right now. Are you still trying to earn your way into heaven? Are you exhausted by the endless treadmill of religious performance? Are you carrying the heavy stone tablets of your own failures? The law will only ever show you your guilt. It will leave you dying on Mount Nebo, staring at a peace you can never reach. Or are you addicted to the spiritual high? Are you waiting for a burning bush? Are you demanding that God send fire from heaven to prove he is real? The prophets have already spoken. The signs have already been given. The tomb is empty. Moses and Elijah bowed to the carpenter from Nazareth. The greatest authorities of the ancient world surrendered their crowns at his feet. The law and the prophets testified that Jesus is the final word. If they bowed to him, why are you still standing? What will you do with Jesus? Will you keep building tents for dead systems? Or will you listen to the Son? The Exodus has already happened. The chains are already broken. The blood is on the doorpost. The sea is parted. Walk through. If this revelation shifted your perspective, if it unlocked the hidden architecture of Scripture for you, subscribe to our channel. We decode the ancient mysteries of the Bible every single week. Share this truth with someone who is exhausted by religion. Let the dead systems vanish. Only Jesus remains.